Welcome to God Have Mercy.
Cool. How are you doing?
We are doing well. Jeff, who's our producer, and I just got back from Tanzania on Saturday.
Yeah, I have been following what is going on in Tanzania. I saw you and Bishop Ande going through hard roads. I think the roads are kind of bad, right?
The roads are tough.
Yeah, I saw that you stop at certain point and like they're trying to push your car or something like that.
It was interesting. Jeff wants one of those cars that he has, but he doesn't want to have to drive on those roads. But it was great, driving in to meet with the Maasai tribe in 2 hours outside of Morogoro. I mean, it was a wonderful experience, but yeah, getting there is not for the faint of heart. As you know, I'm sure as a bishop, you've traveled to places that are hard to get to.
Absolutely.
I am so grateful for you for joining us kind of on short notice, because I think what I want to do first is just take a moment for you to introduce yourself. For those of you who don't know, Bishop Ande Emmanuel is our guest today. Right. We're going to talk about a few things. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and call to ministry, and then we'll talk about some more contemporary issues going on with you and the United Methodists in your area.
Thank you. My name is Bishop Ande Emmanuel. I am the resident bishop for the United Methodist Church in Nigeria, which include 2 mission districts of Senegal and Cameroon. I got elected, one of the new bishops that were elected within the United Methodist Church. I got elected on the 7th of December 2014 and got consecrated on the 8th of December. So assigned by the West Africa Central Conference Episcopal Committee to be the bishop of the United Methodist Church and mission districts of Senegal and Cameroon. I am so delighted to be United Methodist. I was born United Methodist. Both of my parents were United Methodist. My father is a local evangelist who has been involved in lay preaching ministry and started the United Methodist Church in my community, which is called the United Methodist Church Nokai. This is the church that nurtured me, where I grew up to receive a call to become a pastor. I joined the ministry of the United Methodist Church about 23 years ago when I went to Banyam Theological Seminary and graduated with a diploma in Christian ministry and Christian religious education. From there, my journey to pastoral ministry began. I've worked ever since for the United Methodist Church. From that point, I went back again to school to do a bachelor degree in theology from a Reformed Theological Seminary in Taraba State, Nigeria, and come back again and work for the United Methodist Church. In 2010, I went to Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., where I did a master's program in theological studies, and then got back home again and continued my work as a pastor. Among the work I have done for the United Methodist Church includes I have served as a youth pastor, a youth director for the United Methodist Church in Southern Nigeria Annual Conference. From there, I was appointed as the administrative assistant to the bishop. That has been the position I've been working on for the past 10 years until I got elected as a bishop of the United Methodist Church. So I am excited to be a pastor and then now bishop of the United Methodist Church. All my life I have served the United Methodist. I grew up in the United Methodist Church and I served the United Methodist Church, and I'll continue to do this.
Well, congratulations on your election in December to the episcopacy as a bishop, and
Thank
for
you.
all the great work. And you are married and have 3 kids, right?
Yes, I am married. My wife's name is Ande Emmanuel. We have 3 kids. My first son, who is 13 years old. His name is Goodness. His sister, who is 10-year-old, her name is Mercy. And their younger brother, who is 7-year-old, his name is Shall Follow Me. So they are blessed with 3 adorable kids. They are such adorable children.
That's wonderful. Well, one of the things I thought would be helpful, I know for United Methodists in the United States, one of the things that I found in us doing this podcast and in becoming friends with Bishop Ande Emmanuel, in talking about things that go on in Africa as it relates to the United Methodist Church, and in recent years, some of the stress or the division through the new denomination that formed the Global Methodist. American United Methodists kind of know what's gone on here and how we've gone through it, that we lost about 24% of our churches, but only half of those 24% joined the Global Methodist Church.
We're aware of that.
The other half went independent. But what people hear is only snippets of blogs or words. And so you'll hear things from people in the GMC who will say what's happening in Africa and how all of Africa wants to join with them, but they can't. And then you hear from United Methodist that that's not the case. And so one of the things I know in talking with Bishop Ande, I know in coming back from Tanzania, and we can share more of those stories later, how they have handled things, which I think is extraordinary. But Nigeria has been an interesting place over the past couple of years, and there's been some articles that have been written. So I wanted you to just kind of share the story of what's been happening in Nigeria over the past couple of years and where we find ourselves now, so that people in the United States can have a better understanding of what's going on in Nigeria. Africa as a continent is huge, but it's just one place in all of Africa.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve, for this wonderful question. To answer your question, I would like to draw you back a little bit to our history as United Methodists in Africa. One of the challenges that have been between the Western country and the African country is that of neocolonialism, where this has been a problem in the United Methodist Church until we got to a vote for regionalization, which is something that we needed. And many a time the church in America is considered as the superior church. In other places are just periphery, or they are just attachment. But the reality hasn't changed much, most especially with the emergence of the Global Methodist Church. We clearly see the real definition of neo-colonial approach to what is happening in Africa. I normally tell people why does it take us this long to realize that the worldwide regionalization was the solution we needed for the United Methodist Church, for us to be in ministry together. Before the worldwide regionalization, I have been a delegate to General Conference since 2012 in Tampa, Florida. From that moment up to today, I have served as a delegate to the General Conference. And one thing I realized about General Conference is that whenever we are at the General Conference, most of the conversation are dominated by issues that are Americans.
Yes.
So more than 95% of what happens at the General Conference is U.S.-centric.
Yes.
Those of us that are coming outside America will sometimes get stuck in that conversation, not knowing what people are talking about.
Yes.
So when the idea of the worldwide regionalization came into being, we thought that this is a good idea, because we needed a church that is not going to center on America alone, but a church that is more global. When we meet, like in the General Conference, we should be talking about issues that are global.
Yes.
And America can have its own chance to talk about issues that relate to its own context. So when this idea, the whole idea of the worldwide regionalization came into being, many of us in Africa realized that this might be the solution to our difficulty at the General Conference. So I have been working to fill the gap for information and in awareness regarding the worldwide regionalization when it started with the connectional table and the Christmas covenant team. So we try as much as possible to provide information even before the postponed general conference was postponed. And when we saw the proposal after the proposal for the breaking of the United Methodist fell as a result of the COVID, the worldwide regionalization plan came into being, and we embraced it. We try to provide information at the grassroots level to our churches, our people, that this is the plan that we needed to move our church forward. And this is going to solve the problem that we are having when we are at the general conference, that conversation were dominated by American issues. So by the time that we got to Charlotte for the general conference, our delegates are aware that this is what we needed. Mm-hmm. So that is why we were not able to face any challenges passing the worldwide regionalization. Though even before we went to challenge, those people that are already agitating to join the Global Methodist Church in Africa are telling people here in Africa that if you pass the worldwide regionalization, the majority of United Methodists are going to leave in Africa, are going to leave the United Methodist Church to join the Global Methodist Church. That has been the argument that the people who are advocating for the Global Methodist Church are spreading in Africa. And we came in to tell them that that's not true. So at the point that we are at the general conference, some people were trying to negotiate, give us disaffiliation in Africa, and we will give you the worldwide regionalization. And I told people that you don't need to negotiate that. The African church is aware that the worldwide regionalization is the solution for what is happening in the United Methodist Church. And thank God, the proposal for the continuation of disaffiliation in Africa fell, but the worldwide regionalization passed with supermajority. So we are so grateful for what happened at the General Conference in Charlotte. So we celebrated because the worldwide regionalization gave us the opportunity to be a church that is in ministry within our own context. Before, as I said earlier, we used to be an American church with satellites of campuses all over the world. But now, with the passing of the worldwide regionalization, we are on the path to becoming a worldwide church that will do ministry within its own context, being aware of our contextual differences, which is very key to doing ministry in the 21st century. So when we come back from the general conference, those who went to spy, I call them spy, those who are working for the Global Methodist Church but went to general conference were there just to spy for the Global Methodist Church what is going to happen. But thank God we succeeded at the worldwide regionalization got passed. And when we came back to Nigeria, another part of African country, these few individuals begin to campaign in support of the worldwide regionalization, in support of disaffiliation. Even when disaffiliation fell at the general conference, they begin to tell people that the United Methodist Church have accepted homosexuality, same-sex marriage, and the United Methodist Church is going to impose that in every country, that in no time, every country, whether you like it or not, you are going to be forced to conduct same-sex marriage in your own church. We told people that was the misinformation and disinformation that the supporters of the Global Methodist Church begin to spray in Nigeria, in other parts of Africa. They were doing that simply to lure people to join them into a Global Methodist Church. Why are they doing that? Because they have told people earlier on that if United Methodist Church passed the worldwide regionalization, majority of Africa are going to join the Global Methodist Church. And I believe that many people in the U.S. believe them, because I have conversation with several folks in the United States who are very skeptical about supporting worldwide regionalization, because they think that Africans are going to leave the United Methodist Church. And I told them, no, that is not going to be the case. Africa has come of age. We have scholars, we have theologians, we have learned people in Africa, and we have been looking for opportunity to contextualize our theology. Yeah. We can do ministry within our own context. We can do worship within. If you have visited African country, you see our worship services on Sunday. They are quite different.
Yes.
From how worship services are in America. That is who we are. That is our own context. People don't mind in Africa staying in church for more than 3 hours just singing, praising. That is not happening in America. So the worldwide organization has been something that the African church has been innate, doing ministry within our own context. We can develop our liturgy. We can develop our literature based on the context of Africa and our own experience of who God is. So with that kind of argument, we told our people that there is no need to join the Global Methodist Church. Because the Global Methodist Church, to some of us, this is a neo-colonial approach of doing church. The reason why the people in America are telling people in Africa to leave the United Methodist Church is colonial.
Yeah.
When you told us to leave the United Methodist Church to join the Global Methodist Church because the United Methodist Church in America is accepting same-sex marriage, how does that have to do with us? We
right.
are Africans.
Yes.
We are African. We don't have problems of homosexuality or same-gender marriage in Africa. No one has ever approached a pastor or a church or a congregation in Africa demanding that they are same-gender people, that they need to be married. So why would you export the conflict over progressive and traditionalists in America to Africa and giving us the opportunity to be fighting ourselves on issues that are not of African origin?
I totally agree. It's an American issue that we have imposed on the rest of
Absolutely.
And I would say Western European as well. And
Absolutely.
When I was just in Tanzania, Bishop Ande was telling me about a story, the same thing. People went into Tanzania and they went to the governmental leaders and said the United Methodist Church and Bishop Ande, they're bringing homosexuality. They're going to do all this.
And that's true. That's what they do.
He had to meet with the high-level government for 3 hours, and by the time they got done, the government said, "Well, this is what they told us is not true." Because Bishop Muyambo was like, we're not doing any of that because we can't do weddings unless the tribal leaders approve, and the tribal leaders are not going to approve a same-sex wedding. It's against the law in the state. They're not going to do it. And so the governmental leader said, well, why would these people come tell us this? There's nothing here. Absolutely. This is not a problem.
So that is neo-colonial. This is a new colonial of ways of doing this. These people using the few Africans, our brothers in African, who were promising, who were promised scholarship, funding, and equal representation in church in America, and all this kind of exotic traveling. Those are what they use to lure our brothers, our few brothers who decided to join the Global Methodist Church, thereby bringing this false information about same-sex marriage, homosexuality, and try to pollute the church and divide the church in Africa. But thank God, they are failing. For example, in Nigeria, after the General Conference, when we got back home, the former bishop went and into a particular church and declared with his cabinet that the 4 annual conferences in Nigeria have left the United Methodist Church, which is not true. So they sent those information to the Global Methodist Church in the U.S. that the Nigeria Episcopal area with the old annual conferences within it has decided to join the Global Methodist Church. But I believe by now the Global Methodist Church knew that that was not true.
Yes.
Because the persons that joined the Global Methodist Church were only few, were the former bishop and few and his cabinet. And not even his cabinet, not all the members of the cabinet. There were 4 persons from the cabinet who refused to join the Global Methodist Church. But he and his cabinet, with few individuals, most their tribal people and relation, were the only persons that joined the Global Methodist Church. The majority of United Methodists in Nigeria decided to stay United Methodists. So in a rate of 100%, I will comfortably tell you that 80% of United Methodists in Nigeria decided to stay within the United Methodist Church. And in addition to that, not only that 80%, after the former bishop left and joined the Global Methodist Church, we got another group of United Methodist Church that left the church when he got elected. Those people that have been following the history of conflict in Nigeria, when the former bishop John Wesley Yohana got elected in October 2012, we lost more than 350 pastors, more than 400 congregation, and more than 450,000 United Methodists who left and break their connection with the rest of the United Methodist Church because he was elected.
Because he was elected, those churches said...
Yes, those churches break their connection.
But they remained United Methodist.
They remained United Methodists. They used the name United Methodist. They maintained the emblem and the logo of the United Methodist Church. But none of them accept appointment from him. None of them allow him to visit their church. None of them, they hold annual conferences of the United Methodist Church, but without him. They elect a president pro tempore. For these 12 years that he had been the bishop, this group of persons refused him to be their bishop. They maintained their annual conference by electing a president pro tempore at each session of the annual conference. But here is the good news. When I got elected as the bishop, and when he left to the Global Methodist Church, this group of persons returned back to the United Methodist Church. And now they are together with us. As I'm telling you now, the United Methodist Church in Nigeria is stronger than the way it was when it was with the former Bishop John Wesley Yohana. Now we have risen from a 700,000 membership church to 1.1 million membership church, even with the 20% that break away to the Global Methodist Church.
Wow. So and I don't think most people here, they don't know that.
Right. Yeah, this is a reality.
Because what happens is and I would say people from the United States who are either going over there or who speak here say that that they have the majority of people that have gone with them, is what they will say.
That's not true.
Yeah.
The reason why they are hiding that for the Global Methodist Church, because they want to impress the Global Methodist Church. If they have the majority, they would have allowed the process. The former bishop would have allowed a process that is transparent by using paragraph 572, which is the only exit path for anyone that conferences that want to leave the United Methodist.
And just short for people who are going to listen in the United States. In the United States, individual churches were allowed to leave under a certain paragraph, but in the rest of the world, they had to go through a different process by annual conferences.
Absolutely.
And there were several conferences that went through that process. The Ivory Coast was one, Côte d'Ivoire, and the Russian conference. They went through the right process, and this past year in Charlotte, they were approved and allowed to exit under that process. So what you're saying is that if the majority had been there in Nigeria, they could have followed that process, and they would have approved and been able to leave.
Yes, and that's correct. They would have followed paragraph 572 and followed the process of leaving to be sure that they have the majority, because they don't have the majority. It is only propaganda. This is just a propaganda and abuse of leadership, abuse of power that the former bishop used to cajole or to try to force people to go. That is why you see a lot of conflict happening in Nigeria lately, because people are not aware that they have taken a decision to go to the Global Methodist Church.
Yeah.
None of them were aware that we are going to the Global Methodist Church. It is only the bishop sitting down with his cabinet in a particular church declaring that the United 4 annual conferences in Nigeria have gone to the global. But later on, they came to realize that they cannot impose the Global Methodist Church on people. So they don't have the majority. They don't have the majority. The United Methodist Church has consistently voted to remain a United Methodist Church. Our church is not, we are not in United Methodist Church because of America. Correct. We are in the United Methodist Church because God has called us into this church. We have seen the light of Jesus Christ in this church, and we believe that we can follow Jesus in the United Methodist Church, and if we do the right thing, we can still make heaven. So we don't need to go to any new church. So this propaganda that the Global Methodist Church is spreading, that that they are the majority in Nigeria, they are not just doing it because they want to impress somebody. They want to impress someone in America who is funding them. They want to give him that impression that they have the, whereas in reality, when you come to Nigeria, they don't have it. When you look at our event in Nigeria, they don't have that number to hold the kind of event we're holding. We just did the 2025 annual Christian revival for the 5 annual conferences. Each annual conference had its own revival. One annual conference, more than 25,000 people came for the revival program in one location, more than 25,000.
Wow.
It was only last week that we did for the Northern Nigeria annual conference while I was still in the US, but still more than 15,000 people from the Northern Nigeria annual conference, which is the smallest conference, came out for the annual conference revival. So the GMC don't have that population, they don't have that number, they don't have that capacity to hold that kind of event. What they are doing is that they are micromanaging, they are stage managing the GMC church in Nigeria to create this impression that they have delivered the promise they made to the Global Methodist Church. But to tell you the truth, they don't have it. If you look at Africa as a whole, if you take a look at Africa as a whole, look at the Congo Central Conference. The majority that stays within the Congo Central Conference are United Methodists.
Yes.
When you come to Africa Central Conference, the same thing. The majority stays at the Africa Central Conference. When you come to West Africa Central Conference, here you realize that it is only Cote d'Ivoire that left. Even when Cote d'Ivoire left, she did not join the Global Methodist Church.
Right.
And it's only in Nigeria and Liberia that you have a little number of people that join the Global Methodist Church. Look at Liberia. I was there at the Liberian annual conference when the GMC in Liberia launched the Global Methodist Church in Liberia. There were just a handful of people. These were only people that have built a relationship with the Wesleyan Covenant Association. They have been fed by the Wesleyan Covenant Association. They receive money from them. Even before this issue of over regionalization came, these people through Africa created African Initiative as a means whereby they get money from their friends in America. So because they have taken money from them, they are trying to make sure that they get people for them to go to Global Methodist Church. That's what's happening in Liberia. That's what's happening in Nigeria. And thank God, they didn't get the number they wanted. It was only few individuals that decided to join the Global Methodist Church. The rest of the church is staying United Methodist. For me, the United Methodist Church is bouncing stronger than the way it has been in the past.
That's great to hear. You know, that was one. Those are the two places I think that a lot of people in the U.S. have heard was Liberia and Nigeria, because your former bishop, and for people who don't know, you worked in the bishop's cabinet. You were an assistant to the bishop in Nigeria. So you've been involved in this story, in this process, deeply. And I think people thought because of a few personalities that Liberia was also going to leave. But again, they didn't have the resources or the numbers to be able to go through the process that would allow them to leave. And so I think that whatever people want to argue for who has more and who's left and who's, The proof is, did they have enough people to be able to vote to leave by the conference? And they didn't. If they had, they would have done it.
Absolutely. They don't have that number. It's just they are stage managing themselves and trying to create this impression that they have. Look at it. When the Global Methodist Church members in Nigeria went to Costa Rica for their first general conference, there were only two people that went. The former bishop and his friend, whom he wants to make bishop, they were the only two people that went there. So that they don't have that number. If they have, they would have tried it at the annual conference session. Because I'm telling you, in all the 5 annual conferences in Nigeria, if they try that, even today, tomorrow, anytime you try that, 95% of the United Methodists will still confirm that they're going to stay United Methodists.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about one of the things that has been talked about has been some violence. In recent days, there have been some churches. So in Africa, individual churches do not have the same process like in the United States where they can disaffiliate. Right. But some global Methodists, like you said, even the minority, have gone in and have claimed United Methodist churches, schools. The bishop who joined the GMC claimed the conference office. They removed the signage. They put up their own signage without any legal process, without any permission. And this has led to some conflict that has some violence, I think, as well, from maybe participants on both sides. There's a lot of heightened emotions. Talk a little bit about some of this stuff that's been going on over there so people have a better understanding.
Yeah, thank you very much. What is going on is very unfortunate. As I've said, this shouldn't have happened in Africa. This shouldn't have happened in Nigeria, because this is an imported conflict. This conflict was imported from America to Nigeria. As I said earlier on, we do not have a problem of same-sex or same-gender issue in Africa. Africa is one church. We don't have progressive. We don't have traditionalists. But the concept of progressive and traditionalist was exported from America and Western Europe to Africa and try to divide our church between progressive and traditionally. Even at that, people at the grassroots level don't know when you talk about progressive, you talk about traditionalists. People at the grassroots level don't know about that.
Yes.
So it is very unfortunate that these things are happening. But I think we should call a spade, with to set the record straight. The conflict that is going on, particularly in Nigeria, is a conflict that was structured by the GMC and funded by the GMC. What did I say? Why did I say so? The GMC in America, when they decided to leave the United Methodist Church, they followed the process. They followed the process in the Book of Discipline before they got disaffiliated.
Yeah.
But look at how they try to look at Africa as a naive country by telling Africa that you don't need to follow the process. While they have followed the process in America, they turn aside to tell their followers, those who want to go to GMC in Africa, that you do not need to follow the process. If they have told them that you need to follow the process, the same thing we did in America, this conflict wouldn't have arisen. So they teach them, we're going to give you money, go in there and take by force church property. For example, the conference center in Jalingo, which was built and raised by the United Methodist Church. When the former bishop was leaving, he declared that conference office is now Global Methodist Church. They removed all the signage there, the landmarks that were in United Methodist. They were removing it and installing that of the GMC. They went to our seminary, tried to do the same. The people sitting on a Sunday, you will sit down and see somebody coming with the police to change the name, to change the signboard, the landmark of United Methodist Church to Global Methodist Church. Because the United Methodist Church are the majority, some people were not patient enough. They have to react. They have to tell them, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
For example, one of the bishops of the Global Methodist Church showed up in Nigeria uninvited. He went to the property of the United Methodist Church, the Banyam Theological Seminary. Bishop Scott Jones went to Banyam Theological Seminary without permission and trying to hold his annual conference within the United Methodist facility without permission. What audacity! This is neo-colonial. You can show up to a property in Africa and trying to without permission to hold an annual conference by the Global Methodist Church in a property that belongs to the United Methodist Church, while in America you have to pay for it before taking it.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was a blow to us in Africa, for a white man showing up in our property and telling a few individuals that are following, you don't need to respect the book of discipline in Africa, whereas he did respect the book of discipline by paying before he disaffiliated. So, these are kind of issues that created conflict. As a result of that, when the United Methodist Church resists this attempt for the GMC to dominate its property, the GMC began to attack the United Methodist Church. The first attack was launched in Mungadoso, a district in Mungadoso, and this is a home of the former bishop. Because even at the home of the former bishop, majority of the people in that church, in his home church, decided to stay United Methodist. There are 3 churches within the Mungadoso, his maternal home. 2 churches solidly stayed in the United Methodist Church. It is one that is divided 40% for him and 50% for United Methodist Church, even in his home village.
Wow.
So because the United Methodist Church decided to stay united, the GMC began to attack them. In this village of Mungadoso, the GMC on Sunday attacked members of the United Methodist Church, killing a 27-year-old. That very night, they went into a building and set that building ablaze, killing 2 infants, 2 children who were sleeping in the night were born alive in that building. So we saw all this attack going on. And apart from that, the same thing happens in Zelani, where members of the United Methodist Church were ambushed because the GMC came to the pastor's house to remove the pastor from the pastorage, but were resisted by the United Methodists. When they were overpowered by the United Methodist Church members, they went and lay ambush. They ambushed members of the United Methodist Church and shot 5 of them. 1 died at the spot, and the 4 were taken to hospital, and a woman who is a pastor's wife died at the hospital.
Oh my God.
So these were United Methodist Church that were being killed and attacked. But the GMC will flip the story by telling people is that the United Methodist Church are the one that are attacking the Global Methodist Church. But they wouldn't mention a single name of a Global Methodist member that was killed. So all these people that have been killed when this drama about GMC started in Nigeria were United Methodists. It is not that United Methodists don't know how to take gun, but we tell our members, you do not pay evil with evil.
Right.
Calm down. Be peaceful. We will take this matter to court.
Yes.
So this matter has been taken to court now, is before the Federal High Court in Abuja. Because we respect the law, we took this matter to court so that the court can adjudicate this. But the Global Methodist Church is going about attacking members of the United Methodist Church, even when this matter is in court. So as it is now, we are before the court, and we want to thank the Nigerian security, most especially at the federal level. Now they have provided security for members of the United Methodist Church in their places of worship to ensure that no one is attacked again. So we have taken this adequate security measure to ensure that our members are not attacked again.
So the government now is helping to protect the United Methodist
Absolutely.
churches?
Absolutely.
Because they see the threat.
Yes, they saw the threat. Yes, they
Wow.
saw it, and they provide. Now they have assigned police in every United Methodist Church during worship to make sure that no member of United Methodist Church is attacked again.
Well, I will say, I know probably people who listen to this podcast are not reading articles from Bishop Scott Jones, but I will say that, to be a leader and to go into a contested property, that's inflammatory, and that is something that ethically, morally, maybe free country, you go where you want, but if you're a leader and you're responsible for leading people, and you go into a situation where there's a contested property, that's an unethical action on behalf of a leader, because that you're potentially leading people into a confrontation. And I just think, Bishop Jones was our bishop for a lot of years. I worked closely with him. All due respect, he's been on this podcast, and people can go listen for themselves. He's got some big blind spots, personally, in my opinion, and he also interprets the law to benefit himself, so that he makes interpretations of the book of discipline. He did it in our conference where he interpreted a certain passage about 2553. He was the only bishop who interpreted it the way that he did. And it was an incorrect interpretation, but it benefited him, and it benefited the GMC churches that were leaving. And so I think, I'm not going to question his faith, his love for Jesus, but I am saying that he does have blind spots. I mean, the man sat here, Jeff, and said he hadn't told a lie in 45 years. I don't trust a person who says that. I mean, just all due respect. That
is a lie.
If you sit here and say, "Oh, the last lie I told 45 years ago," my red flag is going off, and I'm thinking, this guy. What it points to is a lack of self-awareness and a lack of humility. That, hey, I could be doing something wrong here. I could be making a mistake by meeting in a building that's contested that could lead to a conflict. As a leader, if I thought that was the case, I might meet outside the building and say, "Hey." But you don't go into it. That is an unethical behavior. It is for a leader to do that. That leader is participating in the violence that will follow. They are a player in that.
When you show up at the Banyam Theological Seminary and wanted to hold what you call the annual conference of the Global Methodist Church, more than 500 United Methodists show up and say, "You can't do it here." Knowing quite okay that place is predominantly dominated by the United Methodists. He showed up because somebody lied to him that we have taken this property. And when he showed up, the people said, "Nah, you can't do it here. This is a property of the United Methodist Church. You need to go do it elsewhere." And he has to leave. He left and did his annual conference somewhere else.
But what he writes here to people is that he was present and he was under threat. But what he doesn't have the self-awareness to see is that he wasn't told the truth, and that there's a different situation on the ground. And again, that goes to the blind spot that we all have blind spots. But this is one, I think, that they're dealing with there, of not having the context and being deferential. Again, I'm not going to belabor the point, because I'm sure somebody will get mad at me about saying that on the podcast. But you know what? Let them get mad. I think I would hold myself to the same standard. I would not go into a church that was contested and try to do something there that would lead to a conflict with the people. That is not Christian. I just does not strike me as Pauline when you're talking about the Corinthians, where he is trying to negotiate these differences, not through adversarial agitation, he's doing it through love and deference. And that's what I just don't see. I mean, and look, United Methodists are guilty. We're not perfect. We sin too. We make mistakes. But I'm finding more often than not that this replicating some of these American political and culture wars, what I'm finding on Christians on the right is that they think they can use any tactic necessary in order to win for Christ, and that is not Christian. Your ethic has to follow. And you have to have love and humility and deference and kindness and goodness and gentleness. as a part of this. And sometimes that means you think, well, I have a right to be in there, but you say, as Paul would say, out of love for the other, I'm not going to go in there because it could cause a problem.
You're right.
Well, you know, one of the things this has been very helpful for us, Bishop, and one of the things I'd like to give you an opportunity. I don't want to, you know, I think you've made a great point, and I think it gives people a clear understanding of what's going on the ground from your perspective and as you are seeing things. What I'd like to hear from you, though, if you were going to talk to United Methodists in the United States, not just about the violence or the issues, but one of the things you said earlier about Africa kind of stepping in now, this regionalism creates, I talked to some of the church folk in Tanzania, and that, you know, you're right. I mean, the United Methodist Church up until this point has been an American denomination with central conferences around the world that were underneath it. And this regionalization now creates equality to where Africa has equal standing, Philippines, Europe, equal standing to the United States, and no longer subservient, which moves away from this old colonialistic kind of thing where you come to a meeting and all we talk about are American issues. Just if you had a couple of minutes to just speak to United Methodists in the United States, what are the things that you would want them to know about the church in Africa, how things are doing, and what encouragements and how can we be praying for you as you move forward?
Thank you. One thing I want our church in America to understand is that we appreciate our connection. We appreciate the worldwide regionalization and where we are today because of our collective effort as United Methodists.
Yeah.
One thing I want us to take, we need to take this contextual ministry very serious. This needs to translate in all our programs. It needs to be at the Council of Bishops. It needs to be at our General Conference. We need to operate really as a worldwide denomination. We need to have programs that center on what is our collective issues, not programs that center on what is bothering America.
Yeah.
So the United Methodist Church in America must understand that whenever we meet internationally, what we are doing should have global implication, not only American implication. This is very important because we appreciate being in this connection together, and we really want to be a church that respect our mutual differences within our own context. That is one. Number two, the church in America needs to support mission initiative in Africa.
Yes.
We have strategies to be sustainable in years to come. So the church in America has to come in, get into partnership. I'm just coming out from the United States Council. We went for the Council of Bishops. One of the things I have shared with many bishops is that we need partners. We are in the church and ministry together. We need partners to come to Nigeria, come to our annual conferences in Africa, and be involved in one or two mission work that is going on. We have a work that is going on healthcare. We have a work that is going on in school with education. Yeah. We have theological training, and we have agricultural initiative. We need people to come in as our brothers and sisters in America to help and support this project. They can be present here and support and work in this facility. They can send their support and donation to promote work here in Nigeria. There are many ways of doing it. So we need to be for each other and getting each other's back. This is something that is very important for us. Yeah. And for us, we will try as much as possible, look at how do we be in mutual ministry with that annual conference. We can develop those partnerships. We can sell our pastors to America as well to contribute in school, to contribute in any project so that the partnership can be a 50-50 give and take kind of thing. So these are some of the things that we are calling on our brothers and sisters in America to do. And also to keep praying for us and to understand that the African United Methodist, this is where the church is growing.
Yes.
And this is where our church should be investing. The church in Africa is growing, and the church, our global connection, should do everything possible to invest in the church in Africa.
Yeah, one of the things I took took as a lesson learned. I met with some of our pastors and staff in Tanzania. You know, you go to worship and it's spirit filled and it's energetic and it's exciting, but yet you also see a deep organization and a structure and a lot of a lot of the members, like someone would get up and give the youth report, and someone would get up and give the women's report, and someone would get up and they'd read the men's report, and the leadership was shared, and then they broke after church and had women's meetings and men's meetings and youth meetings. And I'd thought to myself, if you can combine that spirit-filled, charismatic worship and energy and passion with an organized structure, that's one of I think the formula that's allowing Africa to just explode, to reach people for Christ. And I think we all need to be a part of that together.
You're right. I agree with you. You're right. Right.
Well, Bishop, I know you've got a lot going on, and it's late over there where you are. And I just want to thank you so much for coming, especially this season, because this is the time when there's a lot of annual conferences in the United States. So I wanted to be able to do this so we could put it out and be able to share with folks, just so that they have an update and know what's going on. I really appreciate you. We are praying for you and in support of you and the work that you're doing. And please, will you let all of your people that you meet, and not only in Nigeria, but in Senegal and Cameroon, everywhere that you go, that they are loved and prayed for by United Methodists in the United States.
Thank you, Steve. I am so grateful. Thank you for the opportunity given to me to share our own story on this podcast. I pray that the Lord is going to bless us and bless everyone that is listening to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. We're praying for you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You want to weigh in any?
I don't think so.
No, you're too tired.
I think that's
poor Jeff. He just got back from Tanzania. He's not doing well. I'm 55 years old. I'm having a hard time recovering. But my boy Jeff over here, you gonna make it?
I'm gonna make it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Well, I'll tell you, it's fascinating because I have read, releases or comments or statements on Facebook or social media from GMC, and then articles from United Methodist news sites. And, I know I'm United Methodist. I know that people will say, you believe the side you're on or whatever. But, I've got experience with both of these parties, and I think we could be a lot more careful. It sounds to me like what these folks are doing over there is, what's the word? Instigating.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying they don't have people, and I'm not saying they can't get more people or whatever they're doing, but man, just can you do it in a way that's Christ-like?
Yeah.
I don't know how you divide a church Christ-like. I don't know what the formula is for that.
Right.
Because the only way they can grow is to scare people or to create anger. Anger and fear are the only weapons it seems they have. It's always an anti-message. It's not a positive call to. When we went to Tanzania, it's like we never heard any of that. Like we never hear any of this. This was not. We heard about the church that the pastor had taken over, and yet 97% of the members want to stay United Methodist. So they're actually fighting over the property legally, but the United Methodists are meeting in a tent outside the church.
Right.
They're not, 97%. If anybody has a right to go get in that church and sit in that church, it's 97% of the people.
Right.
And to think that they're meeting in a tent while this gets worked out legally, which is going to take another year.
Yeah.
You don't walk into a place that's contested and do that. I don't care who wants to be mad at me for saying that. I'm not wrong on that. I'm not wrong. I'm wrong on some things. But I'm not wrong on that. That is just a violation of any authority or influence you may have. It's just when you do that, that is not a winsome way to draw people to Christ. That's a church that's throwing down.
Yeah.
Drawing lines in the sand and all this kind of, it's just, oh well, life's too short. Well, this is helpful for people. I hope so, just to hear from Bishop Ande. Well, That's all I got. We're going to take some time off this summer. So if you're looking for us every week, if you just, that's part of your weekly journey, just pray. We'll be praying for you.
We'll probably do some pop-ups at some point.
We will do pop-ups. I love a good pop-up. I love a good Pop-Tart every once in a while, but haven't had one in a long time. Pop-ups are good. We'll do some of those. And then as the summer winds down, we'll probably take a month or so off and then do some pop-ups and come back. Well,
sounds
thank you,
good.
Jeff. You gonna be okay?
I'm great.
All right, make sure you like, subscribe, share this with other folks who are United Methodist. I realize that when we do the United Methodist stuff, there's like some segments of our audience listeners that like it really booms.
Yep.
And others are like, can you just please not talk about this stuff anymore? Yeah. So I get it. But I think it's helpful because it's a way to get this message out to a broader group. I mean, how many people are going to have a conversation with Bishop Ande Emmanuel?
Right.
Or Bishop
and
Biombo.
get the actual facts about what's happening there.
Yeah, but just hear from him personally and hear him ask questions, hear him respond.
Right.
Hear his passion, see his heart. I mean, that's important. You read an article, you don't get anybody's heart.
Right.
You watch this guy and you're like, this guy's passionate for loving Jesus, man, and trying to grow the kingdom. He's well, I'm John Stevens.
I'm Jeff Wood.
Yes, you are. You're going to be okay. You're going to make it, Jeff.
I'm jet lagged.
Jet lagged. And this is Pod Have Mercy.